So yeah, we're hugely thankful to have Isaac come along for a chat about Gloomhaven with me at this year's SHUX.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a fact. You don't have to. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I am.
I'm happy to be here. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm assuming most people here have played Gloomhaven or are familiar with it.
Woo!
It's kind of a thing. And
It's a bit of a thing.
yeah, well, I was emailing you not long ago about doing this, and I said I kind of had a bit of a resurgence, and I just sat down with my brother and played it for about 60 hours in a week, and you were saying that was kind of the
Yeah.
same amount that you usually play it in a week. Was that an exaggeration, or really are you still?
Well, I mean, like, I'm not really playing it. I'm
Yeah.
just like working on stuff, and some of that involves playing it.
Yeah,
Lots
obviously.
of play testing, but no, not like 60 hours a week. Certainly not playing it.
No, that would be.
That's a lot.
I think in addition
It's
to
a little
working on
crazy,
it, that would
yeah.
be. It was a little crazy. I think I had a bit of I got into it in a quite frightening way, which culminated in us doing a certain mission. I should point out at this point, there are probably going to be spoilery things about Gloomhaven in this talk, and that's just going to be the nature of it. And honestly, some of the things are going to be spoily for me as well, because I have not seen all of it, and I was tempted to, before coming and doing this, to open everything up and really look at it and go through it, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But I've seen a chunk of the game, and I feel like I've got enough of a feel of it, but there are obviously going to be things that are touched upon during this that are going to just go into some detail. So there was a mission, I think, which I hit upon, which I think was mission number 13.
Okay.
I wonder if you probably don't, yeah, it's like...
13 sounds like where like what, Gloomhaven Square missions?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is unbelievable abilities. And it involved keeping track of lots of different factions.
It's a rough one.
And I kind of ascended and became an Excel spreadsheet and was just moving things around and just going, okay, this is that, and this is that, and this is that. And it was sort of a weird sense of flow that I couldn't break, because I knew if I did for a single second, I would forget that the shield value on that skeleton would nullify this, and it would all just fall apart.
Yeah, it's a polarizing mission for people.
Yeah.
Because like there's some people who really love it, like they love having all that stuff on the board and keeping track of it all, and then other people like write me angry emails like, oh, there's too much stuff, I hate this mission.
It was interesting, and I found that mission really interesting because it really did remind me of a video game in terms of even the problems that it had.
Yeah.
In the fact that, reading the rules by the rules, it was a system of if you ran out of things to put on the board, then you don't. So then it meant had this really interesting thing of us realizing that effectively the best way to kind of probably play that mission was just to jump over everything's head, run through the level until the level hit its spawn cap for things it could spawn.
Yeah.
So that there wouldn't be any extra enemies in the boss room, which was... It's kind of like, and in the end we actually ended up cheating the rules and being like, no, we're actually going to pick up the enemies. In a way we we decided to modify it to make it harder just because, but I found that fascinating because when I reviewed Gloomhaven a while ago, which I love, I should probably point out in case anyone doesn't know that, I found it fascinating how much it reminded me of video games from about 10, 12, maybe 15 years ago. And I found it really interesting in this, that in my head it was visualizing this thing of, we've kind of broken the game so it can't spawn new enemies. And deciding to kind of be like, no, we're gonna decide that those enemies now are outside of the memory range and they're not gonna fight each other in that room that we left 20 minutes ago, they're gonna pop in again.
Yeah, so you just took them from the back and put them in the front.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I just find this really interesting because I know that you have a big background of playing a lot of video games and enjoying a lot of video games.
Yeah.
Was it accidental how much the design of Gloomhaven ended up kind of feeling like an RPG, a computer RPG of that era?
No. I think that was one of the goals, to create sort of a more like video game type experience in a board game, just because like there's so much excitement to be gleaned from that sort of experience.
Yeah.
And I felt like, that could definitely be injected into a board game experience. I would say like mostly the goal was to sort of create that feeling on the larger scale of like the campaign elements. That's really where I focused on, like, taking a lot of things from, just like World of Warcraft and stuff like that. Just this constant sense of like progression. Like you're always doing something and unlocking stuff and like seeing new things. That's mainly where I was aiming for a video game feel.
Yeah, but it's weird. I found the thing that was interesting and wonderful about it was the fact that you didn't feel like when you were playing that you were playing to do that. These new things that will pop up were fun, but it wasn't a case of, we've just got to do this so we can get this new thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, the core gameplay has got to be exciting as well, right? Or otherwise, there's no point in playing it and unlocking new things that are also going to be boring.
But it's a bizarre thing for me. It's just like, it feels like the core loop of playing is as close as you can get to being addictive without it being something that starts to fizzle in my brain in a way I don't like.
Yeah.
Which is a really specific thing I'm noticing a lot, and it's something that, I've been covering and looking at video games for a very long time, and I find that line is something that video games often will just leap across now. And you think you're having fun until 2 weeks later you're sitting in your pants and eating porridge and you're going, I'm not having fun.
Yeah, it's like, why am I playing this? Why did I spend the last 2 weeks playing this? This is a dumb game.
Why have I given them my money and my time? This is a deep sense of like self-loathing.
I've experienced that.
So there's something about that I found incredibly pure. Anyway, today I've been sourcing lots of questions.
Yeah.
So I've got, and I've been reading up on a whole bunch of different things. So we've got a question here, and some of these are deep. I don't think there's any mean questions here. You can feel free to just not answer any of them.
All right. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Or if you want to be like official, you can be like, my lawyer has advised me not to answer. There's nothing like that, but you can still say that if you want to. It's kind of fun. So Mark Baker asks, he says, I'd love to know what Isaac's view is on the purpose of play. Do you have any particular philosophy when it comes to the place that games have in human society?
That's deep, yeah. I mean, I can just only answer for me, really, and like what games mean for me. And it's just, for me, it's just games are, especially specifically board games, right, are a chance that you can just get together with your friends and have a good time. I mean, that's a pretty stupid generic answer, but like, I feel like, the games are there for entertainment, but also to facilitate a social experience. Which, I mean, for me, like, I'm a pretty introverted person. I've had some difficulty making friends over the years, but I find games in particular just a great way to just inject yourself into maybe even a new group of people you haven't ever met before, and just have that sort of interaction with them that can build a friendship, but it's not in your face about it, right? I can just sort of play this game with you and talk to you. A little bit. I don't have to talk to you too much. I can just play the game when I don't want to talk to you. You can just sort of build up a relationship over time. And I think games are great for doing that.
I think board games are particularly really strong for that.
Yeah.
And it's funny how I remember playing, I think it was Altiplano, which I was playing around a friend's house, and it's a game I like it a lot, even though I know it's not that great, but I really like it. I like moving the colorful things around and doing things with glass. But I remember having a friend I was playing with who afterwards was like, "Yeah, but what's the point? We're not really interacting with each other. We're just sitting here and doing these things." And it was the difficult conversation of just having to be like, yeah, sometimes that's just nice. Sometimes you feel tired and you kind of want to be in the presence of people and have a nice time, but you might just not want to talk to anyone for 20 minutes and move cubes around, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's a very low-key interaction. Yeah.
Was that something the kind of trying to get the right level of interaction then? Was that something that played a part in Gloomhaven, or did you?
Oh, sure. I mean that, I don't know, that's from more a game design perspective, right? But the dealing with the alpha player problem, I think, is a big focus in Gloomhaven. So you're interacting with people, and you're communicating about what you want to do, and maybe what you want them to do, but you're not commanding people to do specific things. It's more, and then you can also sort of organically react to what they're doing. in a sort of interesting way. You know, it's like, oh no, don't kill that monster. I wanted to kill that monster. Oh, why'd you pick up that coin instead of killing that monster? And so yeah, you get like really cool interactions that way as well, where you get like kind of mad at each other, but like, you know, in a friendly way.
Yeah. No, I did enjoy the mind games of picking up coins and picking up treasures, of having that thing of sometimes someone saying, what are you going to do? And I'm going, well, I was sort of thinking about jumping all the way over here and getting this treasure. And then sometimes people will be like, yeah, it's a great idea. And sometimes you'll be like, really? And you're like, well, it might be something really good. Like, and I love when it's a trap or something, and you're just like, oh. The greed just comes back to destroy you all.
Yeah. What I like to do is convince people to kill all the monsters around me, and then I go late in the round and loot all the coins.
That's a system, and I do like the fact that really I think that the interaction in Gloomhaven, the more I played it, I realized is more of a kind of a social game than a tactical game sometimes. Because
sometimes
there is a degree to which when you get to the crunch, you're like, all right, how are we going to deal with this?
Yeah.
And you have to really be like, well, I could maybe do something over here. But sometimes it is a degree of trying to convince your friends that like, no, I think you should stay here. I'm just going to go into that room that's sort of slightly glimmering. And the only problem we found when we were trying to do this negotiations was always, and I don't know if this is something you found playtesting, I'd be interested to know, that whenever we just leveled up, we would always have a start of a mission where everyone would say, well, look, I might do something really cool, you know? Yeah. And everyone would be like, okay, well, I was thinking about doing something really cool, actually. And people would be like, well, you know, I've got a thing I was going to do. And then you'd sort of agree, like, okay, no, fine. And then you all end up suddenly just going at once and using tremendous arsenals of things on, like, you know, a small rat.
Yeah.
And then sort of being sheepish, and because everyone has sort of assumed that they might get to do their cool fireball before somebody did their whatever they were going to do.
I don't know. Like in playtesting, usually people didn't like necessarily level up at the same time. So.
That's true. I think it's just our group gets too excited about fireballs, basically, and that's completely fine.
Yeah.
That's within my remit. We had a kind of technical thing, which I thought was an interesting point. Somebody called Sanic was talking about the idea of having an official AI monster flowchart to help stop endless debates during the game, which is something that I can't really relate to for reasons we'll come back to in a bit. But I thought it was interesting, and I felt especially because people are talking about the video game, where obviously I think people have started to go, well, because there is a video game kind of roguelike version of Gloomhaven, people have gone, there must be some sort of perfect flowchart. This is an element I can't get my head around at all.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, I think there is a flowchart, like an unofficial flowchart, like on Board Game Geek. If you look through the files, I mean, there's like hundreds of files on Board Game Geek, so you have to look around a bit. But yeah, I think it, and I think, I mean, I made like a text version of a flowchart once. I mean, I don't know. I can say like I don't feel like it's too complicated, but at the same time, like I know it is complicated. But at the same time, like I tried to make it as simple as possible, so it's like it's always frustrating to me that people, are still having trouble with it. So it's an issue for me, and maybe my lawyers won't let me talk about it. Maybe I'll just say that. But also like in Forgotten Circles, like the back of the book, there's a pretty good sort of breakdown of like the most common like situations and what monsters will attack in those situations. I think that really helps. But ultimately, I know there are like rules lawyers out who want like a specific ruling for like every single edge case. But at the end of the day, like the game's about having fun, right? And so like, that monster is going to attack somebody, whether he attacks that person or that person. Does it really matter in the end of the day? Like just have fun with it. Just make your own call, and the game's not going to break because you made the wrong call.
This is basically where I was at. I was sort of like, it was a question I included because I found it interesting, because it's a perspective that I can't really relate to. But this is the thing I found about it was interesting, is that we did have edge case stuff a lot when we were playing, where we're like, well, what's supposed to happen here? Like, what would happen? And, we always just decided what we thought was best.
Yeah.
And sometimes what was best was something that was really bad for us. Sometimes it wasn't. But I found that very interesting, particularly in a game with this, which is so rules heavy. we did a stream of it on Twitch, and we just made loads of minor mistakes about the rules. And it's really interesting how people get really quite like serious about this, being like, you're not playing it properly. But what I find interesting is, I think most people, for a very long time at least, probably aren't playing Gloomhaven properly. But because the core of it is, as long as you're not messing up too much, it kind of works. Like, there's a lot you can vary with, and it still just goes. So I find it's like that. I basically want to know how you felt about this sort of like semi-GMing element to just going, okay, that's fine. That's not going to happen, or that's going to happen.
No, yeah, I think that's great. I mean, yeah, like I said, like ultimately, you want to play the game how you want to play the game, like whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And if you're super rules lawyery, like there's a giant FAQ on Board Game Geek that you can go look and figure out like all the edge cases to everything. And yeah, if that's fun for you, that's the way you want to play it, then that works too. But yeah, however you want to play it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a thing, and I don't know. I'd like a kind of. I'd be interested to know what you. I feel like you're going to be cool with anything. You seem incredibly chill, but I wonder how the audience would feel about this. If I were to give a personal confession about the way we play Gloomhaven, sometimes we get to the end of a mission, and we've come right down to the crunch, and we've had a really exciting finale, and we think we're going to do it, and we're so close. And then right at the last minute, something just goes wrong, we draw a bad card or whatever, and we didn't do it. And we realized we just didn't do the mission. Sometimes we look around and we just pretend that we did. And not always, but sometimes we feel like we earned it. Sometimes we feel like, you know what, we really screwed that up, or you know what, we didn't even really try, we just decided to try and get the treasure and run away with it and forget about ever coming back here. But sometimes we think, you know, we worked hard for that, and I felt we deserved it, so we just pretended that we did. Has anyone else ever done that? Okay. So we got like about a third, maybe 25% of the room. Has anyone else been tempted to do it? Yeah, a lot more people. Does anyone here resolutely believe that that is wrong? Yeah, okay, fair. I respect your honesty. Like, we got about, 7 or 8 people. I respect that. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of, like, randomness in games. And I accept the fact, while I was designing Gloomhaven, that there needed to be some randomness, so it's not just some deterministic thing. But yeah, when randomness goes against you, like in a really bad way, and you just feel like, that wasn't fair. I might even tweak things myself a little bit. When like, it's, I was playtesting this thing recently, like, where one of my playtesters had like this really powerful ability, and it wasn't a lost card. And she did it like 3 times over the course of the mission, and every time she played this ability, she flipped over the miss card. Like every like on the and so the, like the 3rd time she did it, I was just like, nah, that's not a miss. Like you hit him, you killed him. It's fine. Like it was just like it was crazy.
I think there's a lot to be said for harsh failure in games, but it has to be valuable to a story of some sort. An arc, and it's just that thing. Yeah, if you keep having failures in a way which is no longer interesting, then it just becomes a bad feel. So I'm just going to keep cheating. I've got in my mind a signed document. Go hog wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's an interesting point as well about what we were talking about earlier about the fact that there are some people who really want official stuff. And I find it really interesting within the kind of community like this, because obviously, Gloomhaven, it's a community. Like, there's a huge amount of people doing a huge amount of things. And obviously, some of that, like Forgotten Circles was kind of like somebody who was part of the community but doing a lot of that stuff and doing really great stuff. You got involved to create that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find it interesting that there are so many amazing resources for Gloomhaven out there, but you will obviously have a lot of people who will want there to be official versions of it. And that's a really interesting problem, especially like I've been using recently a lot of the helper apps. I've been using an app to help me do with some stuff, and I don't use every element of them, but I use some elements of them to just speed along the bits that I want to speed up, or I quite like the one that allows me to look at the rulebook maps and only show the rooms one at a time, so I don't have to try and mentally block it out. And it's like some of these things, particularly the Gloomhaven Assistant, which is helping you track all sorts of things, is a really nicely produced thing that somebody's clearly put a lot of love into. And I guess what I wonder is when you have something like this where the community is spawned out so much, how do you feel about just letting people have that space to just do these things without your involvement? And do you have problems sometimes with people wanting there to be an official version? And do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, when I first, released Gloomhaven, yeah, the idea was that I wanted like just a vibrant fan community who would just come in and run with it, right? Do whatever they wanted, make new scenarios, make new characters. I actually wasn't expecting like so many apps to like pop up so quickly, but that was cool too. I haven't really run into like too many people who like need it to be official. I mean, I think people are just generally happy with whatever apps there are, especially like Gloomhaven Helper. But I guess the main problem I've been running into is like people, which I think is totally legitimate. People want to monetize it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Because it's like they put all this effort into this app now, and now they feel like maybe they should be getting something out of it. And then you get like into this tricky situation where obviously like they can't just monetize it if it's based on like the Creative Commons license that I put out for the stuff. Now I'm getting into like a tricky situation where maybe I shouldn't talk, and maybe my lawyers should, but no, but.
No, but it's a complicated situation with this sort of thing where like you have
Right,
someone
yeah, and I'm not a lawyer myself, so it's really weird. Like when I want people to just go out there and do stuff, but then when you talk about like monetization and things, and it does get into like this weird place. But so we ended up doing licensing for like the Gloomhaven Helper. So like now that's like a paid thing, or it's like free, but then there's ads and you can pay to like remove the ads or something. And so we did a licensing agreement with them, and I think that's been helpful because now they feel like more motivated to like keep up with it, right? Because they're not just like doing it for free now. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, enough. Yeah, I think as well. Like, how do you feel about like? And this is not like how do you feel about people using them in the game? Because as you say, like people can do whatever they want with it. It is an engine for having fun. But how do you personally feel about like? About this sort of use of apps in games, like not to have them being the central point, but having them as kind of assistants.
Yeah, I mean it works. Like I said, like whatever you want to do, whatever works for you. I definitely wanted to create a game that didn't need apps. Like I think that's an important point. It's great if you're making games that also incorporate apps. Like that's another field, but that's great. But yeah, for me, like I felt like Gloomhaven would function best if you could just run it, by itself, and you didn't need any technology. I mean, I think that's going to hit a larger audience, right? There are some people who are just, very anti-technology, and so yeah, I wanted them to be able to play it as well. But then, yeah, if there are these apps that help you run the game, make it faster, make it more enjoyable, then that's just a win-win situation.
Yeah. So. Some more questions here, some fun ones. So, sorry, I just make awkward music noises when I'm holding. Yeah, well, I was really going through a lot of the stuff you'd written over the years on your blog.
Yeah.
It's interesting, some good stuff. It's like
okay,
oh no, it's beads of sweat. No, but I just in terms of talking about the fan community and the idea of people kind of. Taking what you're building and expanding on it. I've got to say, there was a lot of stuff in there that I felt was unfair. Like, you were talking about how you were worried that like you weren't doing the writing and narrative elements of the game justice, and I disagree with that. I think actually like Gloomhaven, in terms of its simple storytelling and simple little arcs and sense of narrative and character, is actually like one of the best in the field. So I think you're doing yourself a disservice there.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's really quite something. But you said in October 2016.
Okay.
No. This is not. I'm not going to It's not going to be a firing line here. You talked about how you felt that the system's full potential has yet to be explored creatively, and about how you were excited for people to take what you'd built as a framework, and to really build on that. How do you feel about that statement now? Do you feel like you've seen some stuff that's getting there, or do you still feel like there's some exciting stuff to come?
I mean, I think that comment, was more about, creatively from like a world building perspective, right?
Yeah.
I think like the system, like the core system is great. But yeah, I just sort of like injected that system into this world that I created, which I mean, you know, I don't want to be too self-deprecating, and you probably don't want me to either. But you know, it's like it's functional, like it works, like it's a good world. You know, it's interesting. It's got new races and like all this sort of interesting, unique stuff. But yeah, I feel like, you know, if I'm not a professional writer, I feel like, you know, if some, you know, fancy writer wanted to like, you know, make their own world, and now I have like other writers involved as well, and so yeah, I think like, yeah, it will improve, and it's going to continue to improve and become like this fully fleshed out, like interesting world with all sorts of interesting stories, and so yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm excited for the future. And I guess you guys have seen that a little bit with like the community campaigns, like the, you know, smaller 10 scenario long campaigns that I've done, where I've sort of fleshed out like the capital city a little bit and stuff like that. So yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah. And I mean, you've talked a lot as well about the process of just trying to even come back to the table of like, well, not come back to the table, you're still doing it all the time, but really getting your teeth into the process of trying to expand upon Gloomhaven in a substantial way. That must
Yeah.
be both, I mean, from an outside perspective, it would seem to be that you have this system, the core system that you've really taken apart and drilled into different parts of it in a lot of ways. Did you feel like there was still a lot more space to be finding really new things to do within that framework?
Yeah, a little bit. So I'd say like the main focus of yeah, expanding the game is just about like creating more content, right? Like just filling in that world, creating new stories and new characters and stuff like that. But yeah, there were sort of some elements, even back like in the original Kickstarter, of like things people were suggesting. I was like, oh, that'd be really cool, but like this game is already huge. Like I can't I can't include that as well. And so yeah, I've been sort of looking at some of that stuff to you know, incorporate into expansions as well.
It's such a, I mean, on a personal level, I just, you know, it's not really a question. I kind of want to applaud you for the fact that you've kind of recognized that the process of making the first game, from reading the things you've written, you've recognized that the process of making the original game is just not something you can or want to repeat, you know, in terms of, because I have a similar feelings about similar things where you end up having a period where you're just working so hard on something all the time.
Yeah.
And it comes out and it's amazing and people like it a lot. But then you think, well, no, but I can't give another, you know, number of my years to something. So how are you finding the process of trying to go back to building something so kind of, well, it is genuinely epic, like nothing else really out there, whilst also trying to keep an eye on not just becoming insane Captain Workman?
Yeah. Yeah, my wife won't let me become Captain Insane Workman again.
That's fair.
Yeah. She was like, no, can't do that anymore.
That's fair.
You have to pay attention to me. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I should pay attention to you.
Makes sense.
So for me, like, you know, creating this, you know, expansion content, it's just been about, yeah, like not working as hard, which may sound weird, but, you know,
No.
it's just taking more time with it, right? So it's not like I need to finish this, you know, like I've already ran this Kickstarter and everyone's waiting for this content to come out, so like I have like 6 months to make like all this stuff. But it's just about taking my time with it, making sure, you know, the quality is still there, but just not like beating my head against the wall for 6 months.
And you finding that your some of your creative processes feel different now in terms of that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, it's like it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because like, it's sometimes like nothing gets done for a couple months, right? Or you know, it feels that way.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, I really just wish I had, you know, sometimes you feel like you want to just like sit down for like months at a time and pound it all out, but then you're like, no, that's not healthy. So
Yeah.
I just need to like take my time with it. But yeah, I have mixed feelings about it.
I completely sympathize. It was just really interesting reading your thoughts on it because I was like, yeah, I understand all of this, and I have the same thing. I sometimes just feel like, but if I could just go back to being the person who just sat at a computer for 16 hours every day and I got so much stuff done, and it's like, but then you burn out. So what do you do for fun outside of game stuff?
I play a lot of video games, and I play board games occasionally, a little bit. I watch a lot of television.
What's your favorite thing on TV at the moment? Or recently?
Well, I mean, The Good Place is fantastic. Just haven't seen the latest episode that was last night, I guess.
It's kind of like The Good Place really is the most game-designed TV show as well.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, it's
new
very
mechanics
intricate.
every episode.
Yeah. Always changing the rules. Yeah, it's a great show.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm always just interested because it's difficult whenever people make something that's really popular. People are always like, what were your inspirations? And the only answer is like, it's just all of the things that led up to this point in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's not, but I'm sure.
I was realizing this the other day. It's like, as I was watching The Dark Crystal, the new TV series, which I wasn't actually a huge fan of. I was a little disappointed with it, if we're being honest. But at the end, I sort of realized, or this is in the movie as well, which was this influence that I realized that I didn't even have until I saw it. But the creatures that the Skeksis create, the weird crab creatures, I forget what they're even called. They show up at the very end of the series, but they're all throughout the movie. And I was like, oh man, those look a lot like the Lurkers, the monster that I created for Gloomhaven. I'm like, that was probably in the back of my brain somewhere, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I actually wrote a script for something recently, and then I realized, I was like, and I think Quinn's was like, you do realize, and the thing is, I've already filmed this, but it's like, you do realize last time we talked about this, we did exactly the same joke. I was like, did we? And it's like, okay. So that's a problem when you start eating into your own compost heap. But yeah, I know you're also a big fan of fantasy, reading. You, at least you were in the past at some point, a big fan of reading fantasy or sci-fi novels.
Occasionally I will have a period where I read a novel or two.
I'm the same.
Then I go through big dry spells.
You got any recent big favorites you'd like to give a shout out to?
No, so I'm in a dry spell right now. So it took me maybe 2 years to read Perdido Street Station by China Melville, or that's not his last name, Mayaville. I don't know. I just I couldn't get through the book, and it took 2 years to read it. It was kind of weird.
It sounds like you kind of.
Eventually, I sat down and okay, I got to read the last half of this book. But yeah, that's the last thing I've read in the last 3 or 4 years. But I'm a big fan of Patrick Rothfuss. So when the next Kingkiller book comes out, I will definitely be reading that whenever that happens.
I go through waves of reading 1,000 books, and I read 2 or 3 books in 2 weeks.
Oh,
I'm reading's great, and I just don't do it for 4 years. I sympathize with that completely. Parker, someone just called Parker, asks, which character class was most challenging to create and which was most fun? And basically, did you kind of land on the kind of core mechanical ideas for the characters first and then build characters around them? Or was it kind of vice versa, or just a mix?
Yeah, it was a bit of a mix. So I would sort of sit down and come up with a concept for a character. And sometimes it started with just the thematic concept for the character, the Cragheart, which I'd probably say was the most fun to create.
Yeah.
It's this is rock dude who's been exiled from his society, and he's just angry, and he's got earth powers, he can throw rocks around or create rocks, but at the same time he can't really control them, and so he's damaging his allies, and just sort of that whole idea, and then just starting to create actual abilities about that, just throwing a big boulder and just having it explode, and
just a big rock man who hurts people around him.
just punching things,
Who was the inspiration for that?
Well,
are you the big rock man who just hurts everyone around you with big rocks?
No,
I don't think you are. Just to resist the joke.
Yeah.
I mean, that leads into somebody else.
Well, I was trying to think what the hardest one to create was, but maybe I should just let you ask the next
No,
question because
go,
I can't think of
Well,
a good
you can
answer
mull it
for
and
that.
you can just pop back in with it at
Okay.
any point if you
Yeah.
think of it. But we basically had another question later on. I can't find who wrote it, but basically talking about whether or not there were some, like, a character in there, like a mechanic-based character, or, like, that you really was like the darling you couldn't kill. Something that just kept being a problem, but you stuck with. And it was like an idea which you loved so much that you just... I mean, I don't know, maybe you didn't kill that many of your darlings. There's a lot of darlings in that box.
Right, yeah. I didn't kill much. I just kind of threw it all in there.
See, I kind of don't believe that either. Like, but, there must have been...
Well, no, I think like every character I created ended up being in the game. I mean, every monster I created, yeah. I mean, it really was just throw everything in there.
Sure. Okay. Fine. Fair.
Every scenario. I mean, I threw every scenario I created in there too. It's like 95. Like, why not have more? Yeah.
Yeah. No. Fair. And I guess the other question really somebody asked was, and I was trying to work out, like, was there any kind of what was the thought process for which characters were available at the start of the game?
Yeah.
Was it kind of like an album, of just like put your best hits early, or was it something
No.
simple?
Well, so I started with the 4 characters. So the starting classes minus the Mind Thief and the Cragheart. So those are the starting 4 characters, and those are sort of kind of based on like standard fantasy archetypes. The Brute, who's kind of the warrior and just the melee fighter, and the Scoundrel, who's a thief, and then the Spellweaver, who's kind of a mage, and then the Tinker, who does healing, but then I also gave him other abilities because healing is boring. So I started with those, and then I created some other characters that I wanted to be, like locked classes. But then it was during the Kickstarter that people, were asking for like more starting characters because there's just these 4. So if you have a group of 4, like you're always going to have the same 4. Mm-hmm. And as part of Kickstarter, you got stretch goals and new things that unlock. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to create 2 new characters that will add to that starting list. And so that's when I created the Cragheart and the Mind Thief, which are like definitely like the more complicated of the starting 6. And that was just because like I'd already, done all this other like crazy complicated stuff, and then going back to like creating starting characters. I'd also just like evolved more like as a designer of classes, and so like I wanted to do some cooler stuff for them. But yeah, that's how they came in, and it was basically like every race except for one had 2 classes. Well, and the Vermlings and the Savas only had 1 class as well. And so like, well, yeah, I'm going to create these new classes, and they're going to be this race. Mm-hmm. And so like, what would be an interesting thing for that race? Like, what would be an interesting class that would tie into the themes of the race? And so I was like, okay, well, Savas, who's exiled from the society, or like a Vermling who lives in the city in the sewers and controls rats with her minds. Yeah, so that was the design process.
Yeah, so it's interesting, the idea that you'd kind of done all the really interesting, crazy stuff first, and then when you came down to doing the more basic archetypes, you were like, well, this is too boring, so I'm going to...
Yeah.
That's actually really interesting, because I think a lot of, the love for Gloomhaven comes from the fact that you have kind of really taken a lot of care into not being too archetypal and actually bring thought into that. Like you've written and talked a bunch about this already, but the fact that even with characters and archetypes, are thinking carefully about tropes and what you want to use, and not just chucking stuff in there for no reason.
Yeah, and I think one of the important things was just having choices, right, for the players, right. So even if you're playing the Mind Thief or the Tinker or whatever, like you're not stuck into doing one thing, right? I mean, you could go full healing as a Tinker if that's what you enjoy, mm-hmm. Or you could just start throwing bombs around. Like there's lots of different ways to play each character, which was important to me as well.
Alex Hearn asks, and this is kind of an interesting one: how do you approach expansions in a game that's already so full of stuff? Like Forgotten Circles is set after the base campaign, which makes sense, but even years after launch, many groups will be nowhere near finishing the base game, like myself included. Like, And he kind of says, I mean, this is, he's actually a journalist by trade. He asks a question which probably already answers for. Have you accidentally shrunk your market by being so generous first time around?
Well, it's just like shrunk the market for the expansions. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, I think so. I mean, if we're being honest. But at the same time, like, it doesn't bother me. Like,
No?
I'm happy with Gloomhaven, and that's the way I wanted it. Like, initially, it was just like, I'm gonna make this giant box of content, and that's all you're ever gonna need to play with. And I wanted to give people that experience. Like, I personally, like, just hate like the Fantasy Flight model of just like, here's this thing, and now if you give us $10 more, we'll give you this other thing, and then $10 more, and we'll give you this other thing, and then we'll do that for years and years and years, and you'll end up paying us like $300 or $400 for this game. I wanted to just give it to you all at once. Like, here it is, just go play it and have fun, and you don't have to talk to me ever again.
Hasn't panned out like that. But yeah.
And that's, I mean, maybe that's a stupid idea from a business perspective, but like, I've always wanted to like run my company and design my games like how I would want them, marketed or sold to me. And so like, that's the model that I, as a consumer, am interested in, and so that's the model that I went with.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's worked out in the end. So yeah, no complaints.
I don't think there are any rules with any of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you can try and run things in a similar way of just doing what we feel like we want to do and what we feel like works. And you always have people coming in and saying, well, you shouldn't be doing it like this. And you're like, well, I don't care.
Yeah, it's working out in
but-
one way or the other.
but I guess-
I will say, obviously now there is expansions, right? So there's more stuff that you can come get from me if you want, but you don't have to. It's all good.
Of course.
But it was nice also that like that I didn't have to like make an expansion right away.
Yeah.
I could wait. It's been like 2.5 years now, and still, there's Forgotten Circles. But I've been talking about like this big box expansion for like a long time now, and but just saying like, it'll come eventually. Like, no, there's no rush, and like I know you guys, there's no rush for you either because you got plenty more content to play. And once it comes out, like I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who are still playing the base game and have no need for it, and that's fine.
Well, there's a funny thing with board games particularly where people kind of do have a slightly completionist nature of buying things, and I kind of wonder if it's interesting because in some way on paper you think, yeah, of course you shrunk your market by having a bunch of people who own Gloomhaven who will never finish that first campaign. But I wonder how many people will still buy a big expansion. And I'm kind of one of them. And like, I've got
you'll get to it eventually, right?
I've got all of the expansions for Cosmic Encounter, and a lot of them I haven't even opened yet because it's almost like once every 3 or 4 years I'll have a thing where I'll bring around the people I used to play it with, and I'll be like, hey, let's open some new. I know that everyone is going to get something we've never seen before, and I just sort of want to have it because I know that eventually, one day, maybe 20 years from now, But I
Play
guess,
it with your kids.
I guess it's an interesting thing where in the current climate of people will buy expansions for things just so they have everything.
Yeah.
Is it interesting getting to create something that maybe only a very small percentage of people will play? Does that actually create some interesting design decisions in terms of what you can do with it?
I don't know. I would say, I'm mainly just creating these games for myself. So, if you enjoy them, that's cool too. But yeah, I'd say like my main motivation for like creating more content, more expansion content is just that like that's what I want to do. Like that's my creative outlet. So like I'm gonna make it.
Well, I guess.
Well, no. Anyway, rephrase your question or whatever.
No, I think that
because like I still wanted to answer that, but I wanted to say that
I was
too.
just going to say from you, for changing the angle of it slightly, like when it came to this doing more of it, what was it you wanted to do? Did you want to just do more something similar, or do you want to mix it up a bit, make it fiddlier? Because there's flecks of stuff, like throughout the campaign, there's flecks of things that show you've clearly got little interest in these little bits and bobs. And obviously, I know Forgotten Circle stuff was done by Marcel, and there's some puzzly elements in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, did you feel like you wanted to do something a bit new with the big box?
Yeah, I think there's an evolution there, like not just in of fleshing out the world, but yeah, I think there can be an evolution to the game design itself, and I think a lot more like how it's presented, I think is interesting as well. So like in Forgotten Circles, I think Marcel really had this great idea of sort of breaking things up into sections, and so you do get that experience of only seeing one room at a time, right? So you don't have to use the app to do that. The game book's going to do it for you. And I think we're trying to evolve beyond that as well, because I think we did make some mistakes, and some people were annoyed at that new approach. But yeah, I think we'll continue to just refine it for the future.
And are you aiming to? I mean,
I don't know if that was kind of vague.
No. I don't think it was. I think it's tricky, and I think especially you did have the tricky situation where you've refined such a tight core loop of a thing that people like, that then obviously as creators you want to expand, and you want to not just like do more of that, but you want to play with things and try things, and sometimes that stuff can be difficult. And especially when you are making things, as you say, for yourself, but also like kind of as a side note, making things for like loads of people. And it's like, it's really hard to find that space of the focus. Like, okay, well, look, I'm making this for me, but just be patient while we try things, and sometimes you won't like it as much.
Yeah. I think the most interesting thing for me is like taking that core system and just finding new things to do with it. Whether that's like a new character or a new monster type that like does something weird, or just new scenarios that like ask you to do things that, I haven't asked you to do before. It's not just killing monsters, but like, and
can you talk to the monsters?
Maybe, yeah. Sometimes.
I mean, maybe that's an old video game joke where somebody reviewed Doom for Edge magazine and they gave it a 6 out of 10 because you couldn't talk to the monsters. So that's a real inside baseball joke. So
I mean, some of the most fun things to me is doing those like mini campaigns where I just get to go crazy. It's like I'm releasing this for free. If you don't like it, that's fine because you didn't pay for it. So I'm just like throwing all sorts of just like random crazy ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks, and has been really fun for me.
Cool. Well, I think we've got about 10 minutes left, which I'm hoping that's gonna be enough time for you. If you need a bit more, we can.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you can. What are we going to do, Jess? You're going to do it from over there with your magic fingers? That sounded weird.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we should talk about this.
Yeah, so I'm just going to come and, if Jess, you can move this camera around as well, so we can see the screen and us at the same time. Will that work? Oh, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that.
Okay, we don't need to do it.
We're good.
All right. I mean, so you initially approached me about just like hanging out and talking, and I was like, yeah, cool. Well, we can do that. And then I don't know, somehow I got this idea, well, maybe I could, hints and sort of release a little bit of information about what's coming, just as an exciting thing. So there it is. I guess I don't get an intro. It's just going to come. So this is the official title, Gloomhaven subtitle. So what this is not the big box expansion that I've been talking about. So what we're talking about today is something that actually like came to fruition like rather recently, but has been moving very quickly. And so basically the idea here is I wanted to make a game, a Gloomhaven game that could reach a larger audience, that would be like marketed to like big box stores like Target and Barnes & Noble. So this is a standalone campaign. So like somebody who has no familiarity with Gloomhaven can walk into Target, buy this box, which price point we're shooting for like $40 to $50, and just get like a Gloomhaven experience for that price point, and it'll be the barrier to entry will be a lot lower as well. Right, I mean, not just the price point, but just like, the size of the box. It'll be like a normal size box. One
that you can lift without having to worry about insurance on.
Exactly, yeah. reduce components so there's not that barrier of like having to organize everything, and you open the box and you're like, what is all this stuff? It's just like, no, this is your game. It's just like any other game, and you can play it as such. Sort of creating a rule book and a sort of scenario flow that's a lot more inviting to new players. It's not like, let's play scenario 1. Oh, we just got crushed. But organizing the rule book in a way that is, sort of drip feeds you the rules, right? So you can sort of play through 1 scenario or 2 scenarios or 3 scenarios, like adding just a little bit of information each time. So
a little bit similar to what they did with Mechs and Minions. If you've
Yeah,
played
yeah.
that, of just being like, okay, we're going to try this. You're going to kill some monsters. Okay,
Yeah.
you've done that. Now you're going to kill some monsters, but with a twist.
Right, exactly. So you just keep adding new twists, and until by the 4th or 5th scenario, you're playing the full game like you would any other normal Gloomhaven scenario. So just trying to get the more casual gamers into it. So it's going to be, I think there's like 24 scenarios. The main campaign is you'll probably play like 12 scenarios, I think. And it's just 4 characters. So we've taken out a lot of the legacy elements. So there's no like reputation or retirement or prosperity. It's just you have these 4 characters, and you're going to play through this story.
Wow.
And then if you want more, then you can go buy the giant box of Gloomhaven.
Convince whoever you live with that it's okay that you now have this thing that lives in your house forever.
Yeah, but also like it works as an expansion as well. So even if you are super familiar with Gloomhaven, you've played it all, and you want more content like this, there'll be 4 new characters.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And 4 new characters.
4 new characters. That's
and
crazy.
All those scenarios, and some new monsters and stuff and bosses, and so.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's amazing. So I'm guessing you're going to be able to take these new
Yeah, they're fully fleshed out characters, so then you can take those characters and bring them into your normal Gloomhaven campaign or whatever else you want to do with them.
That's rad.
Yeah.
That's rad. I don't have any other words for it.
So I can introduce you to the 4 new characters if you would like.
Yeah.
So I'll talk briefly about them since we're running low on time, but So this is the Valrath Redguard. So he's kind of the tank of the group. He's wearing some traditional armor of the Valrath Kingdom, which lives in the south. But he's been exiled from that community. So Red Guards are like the official soldiers of the Valrath society. But he's been exiled from that, but he still, is into his old life, so he still wears his old armor. He's really cool. He's got this sickle on the end of a chain, so he's got lots of short range attacks. They're still ranged though, and he does lots of cool stuff. He basically dances around the battlefield and just chops everybody up. But he has also, got a shield and can tank and all that sort of stuff. But we can move on to the next one. So this is the Hatchet. He's an Inox, which prefer simple names. Brute, Hatchet, just very to the point. He likes throwing hatchets at people. That's his whole thing. He's got lots of hatchets and lots of things to throw him at.
As a quick side note, you play Bloodborne?
Bloodborne? No, I
Or
haven't.
maybe has your artist played Bloodborne?
Probably.
I mean, that's not me being like, no. It's like, I love Bloodborne, and now I can play an Inox who looks like a Bloodborne character. So that's me happy.
Yeah. He's a pretty simple range character. But yes, my artist has played Bloodborne. I'm pretty sure. And
so good. It's just so good. Anyway.
Should I say, hey, be less Bloodborne?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Make everything a bit more Bloodborne. As far as I'm concerned. Right.
He's pretty simple. Just lots of range attacks. But he does have this one cool ability called the Favorite. So he's got a favorite axe. And so it's a persistent card that you can play. Basically, it's like you pulling out your favorite axe. And so now, on a future attack, you can expend this token that you put on the card to basically say, I'm throwing my favorite axe at this enemy, and it's going to do bonus damage. But then your token gets transferred to the enemy that you threw it at. because the axe is now stuck in that enemy. So you now have to kill that enemy, retrieve your token, and then you can use it again.
That's cool. That's real cool.
Yeah, so that's the hatchet. So this is the Necromancer. I'm not like 100% like happy with the name Necromancer just because it's like so generic.
Yeah.
But I think it works for the character. She's just all about raising the undead. So she's a summoner character mainly, but her cards, like most of her summon cards, just like raise. It's called Shambling Skeleton, and she has like a lot of these abilities. But her summons aren't lost. Like when you play the card and it dies, it just goes in your discard pile, not into your lost pile. So you can just summon as many skeletons as you want, but you damage yourself every time you summon a skeleton. Kind of like the cultists, the enemy type. And so the class is less about like managing your cards. I mean, that's also important, but it's also about managing your health because she has very low health. She's one of those 6 hit point starting characters. And so yeah, that's the main crux is like you've got to use your hit points as a resource, and make sure that you never get hit because you never want to lose hit points to running into monsters.
That's a waste.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So yeah, she's really cool.
Throwing skeletons in the bin if you're doing that. So.
Yeah. Was there anything else I wanted to say about her?
Race.
She's human. All right, and this is the Demolitionist. She's my wife's favorite character. So this is a Quatrol, so kind of like a Tinkerer, except she has used technology to enhance her ability to destroy things.
Which is kind of a reaction to the fact that a lot of people, I mean, you love the Tinkerer, right? And
Yeah.
but a lot of people were like, I don't really gel with this. So you just be like, okay, well, look, how about we make one that's just going to destroy everything?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Tinkerer and a Cragheart mixed together.
Cool.
Actually, mechanically, she's probably more like the Cragheart and the Scoundrel. So it's very like focused, single target damage, just and lots of like conditional abilities. Like you get bonus damage if they're next to a wall because you're just gonna like punch them into the wall.
Nice.
Things like that. But yeah, she just goes around punching things. She's got some bombs. Yeah, so she has a job in Gloomhaven of just like destroying old buildings, right? So she's just like a one Quatrol wrecking crew.
Is that by written on there, or is it something by?
Oh, she just has "bye" written on one of them. She
Okay.
doesn't have anything written on the other one. But yeah, so it's just like when she punches you, it's just like "bye, get out of here."
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's really exciting.
Oh yeah, so we are working on sculpts for all this stuff. So this is like the 3D sculpts of that character. So this is another cool thing which I can talk about. So like I said before, we're cutting down a lot on the components. So in this game, to get rid of a lot of that cardboard, which adds a lot of extra weight and extra space and all that stuff to the box, a lot of extra cost. Instead, we're going like the Stuff Fables route, the above and below route, where you get the book and you're just going to play on the book. And there's actually 2 books, right? Because like the scenarios are too big for one book, one double-sided thing, most of them. So basically, you've got a main book, and then there's sort of like a supplementary book that'll have like extra pages that you can, that you'll be able to attach to the other book in whatever way that you need.
It wouldn't be a Gloomhaven game unless it was like, well, obviously, there's slightly too much book.
Yeah. And this was just printed out at Kinko's. Obviously, that's not the final version with like the white borders around everything, so it doesn't quite look great. But yeah, that's the general concept. And so and obviously, like we're gonna do all new artwork for this as well, so it'll look really nice, like as a single dungeon instead of a bunch of separate tiles that may not necessarily fit together very well. So yeah, and then a lot of the features like the water and the obstacles will be part of the artwork, to be fully better incorporated into it. And then stuff like those tables and stuff like obstacles that you can destroy will be, little icons on there that you can put on there, and then when you destroy them, you'll take them off and stuff. But yeah, I think it's a pretty cool system that we're working on with that. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Awesome. That's incredibly exciting. Thank you so much for coming and sharing it with us.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to say about it? Have we got any idea of when it might be available?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So yeah. Well, like I said, we're marketing to big box stores, which is like this whole new process that we're sort of working with and figuring out. So we haven't actually. We're pitching all of this to like Target and Barnes & Noble at Essen, which is in a couple weeks. So if they like it, if they are on board, then it'll probably be coming out like next fall, which is typically when they release new stuff, because it's like back to school time when everyone comes in the store and buys stuff, and then that leads into like the holiday season as well. So next fall is the plan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I've just got to play all the other characters before then. And some of those characters look awesome. That looks really, really exciting. Thank you again. Thank you, Isaac, for coming on our chat. It's been great.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a great experience.
It's been a pleasure. And if people are interested, Isaac has very kindly agreed to sign some stuff.
Sure.
Over in I believe the signing area is over there. I've left maps, how do they work, etc.
I don't know.
I
Sure,
think it's
I'll go over there
in that
and sit
corner.
down
If you just
and
go
share.
over there, I'm pretty sure that's where it is. Yeah.
Oh, and there's one other thing I did need to plug. I'm technically like at this convention promoting the Dark Tower, the Return to Dark Tower. So Justin from Restoration and myself as well will be spending most of our time in the other hall. We're set up at one of those tables along the front ends, the far left one from my perspective, right from your perspective. Anyway, so yeah, we're demoing the Dark Tower all weekends. So if you're interested in that, you can come hang out and
It has a
play some
mad
of that.
electronic tower.
Yes, it's not here though. Unfortunately.
No, I know.
So you'll have to imagine it. It'll be.
But
it's an
interesting project. Yeah, it's well worth a look.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy huge project.
And that's
like, and I say that as somebody who made Gloomhaven. Like this project is ridiculous.
There
like
you go.
there's huge tower elements and like this app that does all this crazy stuff, and there's like lights and it's crazy.
Lights.
Lights.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again so much.
Yeah.
And thank you all guys for coming and listening.